Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, I'm Ron, alcoholic. Welcome to the new people that didn't identify themselves. And happy birthday to the 21 years of sobriety. I know there's some mathematicians out there, so I'll give you some figures so you don't have to add them up. I was born in Minneapolis in March 18th, 1926. I had my first drink in 1939, and I had my last drink in 1969. And I haven't had a change of attitude yet. But that's kind of a small group, so I can't give a humility pitch tonight. So, no, I'm really grateful to be here, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I enjoyed hearing the birthday people. I think birthdays are neat, and especially that number one, that's a biggie. And they're all big, but number one seems to get you over the whatever it is. I was born on the 18th of March, like I said, 1 minute after midnight, which was a minute late of St. Patrick's Day. And my aunt wanted to name me Late Patrick. And little did she know that was going to be the story of my life, you know. But that's just the way it was. I'm from an Irish Catholic family. Irish Catholic alcoholics, you know. And our thing was we drank, or the family did, and the older members when I was a kid. And they drank and fought on Saturday nights and went to church on Sunday morning. And you didn't tell the neighbors what was going on in your house. That was rule number one. Nobody knew your family business. And of course they knew, you know, they could hear it. But that's kind of the way I was raised. I was always attracted to the drunks in the family. They seemed like they were having the most fun, you know. And the gal with 14 years talked about not wanting to be an alcoholic, and I can sure identify with that, because jumping ahead of my story here, but I didn't want to be alcoholic either. And after I got going into AA, I started checking out my family tree to see if there was anybody in my family that wasn't an alcoholic on my dad's side. And I went all the way back to 300 BC. And there ain't any. They're all a bunch of drunks. And some of the famous stories written about our family name is when the English whipped us, you know, it's because we were drunk. In fact, one of the big deals was was in the 13th century, I think it was, something like that. They got so drunk they couldn't turn the cannons around, and the English came up on the other side of the hill. And so it goes on and on, you know. But anyway, there's no out there, because I used to really check that book out looking for loopholes, you know. And but anyway, I had my first drink in, like I said, 1939, and I didn't drink all the time after that, you know, till I was about 16. And I got drunk at a buddy's house in the summer, that I recall being really drunk. And his parents were gone on summer vacation. A bunch of us went over there and and got into his liquor cabinet and got wiped out. And what happened to me was I got in a fight with the high school bully, and I come that close into whipping him, damn near. And that set the pace for the rest of my life. Everything I did was damn near, you know. And a year later, I went in the Navy. That Second World War come along, and got permission to go in the service. And I learned how to drink a little bit in the Navy, and got out. In 46, I guess it was, 47. And tried to go to school, tried to do this, tried to do that, and traveled around, and I always wanted to go to college. And I'd sign up, and I'd give it hell for a couple of weeks, and then something else would come along. First time I signed up for college, I signed up for on the GI Bill for journalism and fencing. And so I was really academic, you know. But, and that college story is a long story. I went to college off and on for almost 20 years. And I completed, I think, 20-some units. So that ought to tell you something. And I was always signing up and, you know, that 100-yard dash or whatever, but that was it. And anyway, I got out of the Navy and I traveled around. I went back east, and you know, it's interesting. I jump around a little bit, but I got a cousin that I used to drink with. It's a couple of months younger than I am, and we were in the service at the same time and all that. And he got in some trouble in his early days, but he ended up in business and did very well. And as far as I know, he drank just like I did, but he never made it to AA. But he retired like almost 20 years ago, and a really successful person. And he lives up in Seattle, and he sits on his front porch in a rocking chair, and that's it. That's all he does, is just sit there and look. And I got to be grateful for that's one of the things I was grateful for alcohol. I got to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have done or couldn't have done, like get married, have kids, and buy houses, and lose houses, and all of that, because I didn't have any really courage without the booze. Even if I wasn't drinking at the time, if I knew I was going to be able to, it gave me some esteem, you know. And I fought amateur for a while, and I boxed professional for a while. And then when I went back in the service again, when I went back in the Marines, and during the Korean thing, I boxed amateur, but I couldn't do anything because I'd fought pro. And but I thought I was hot stuff. I hope my throat holds up. I can give you an example of how my feelings were. I had just gotten out of the Navy. I was less than a month, and I was up in San Francisco. And I had my first civvies. I had a gray pinstripe suit, one-button roll, and a pink shirt, and a black tie, and suede shoes, and I had 1-2 divisions in the service, in special services and boxing. And I was sitting at the top of the mart up in San Francisco, and I was having a few drinks. And this is my thinking, that there wasn't anything that I couldn't do, anything I couldn't handle. I had the whole world in front of me, and I was full of, you know, get up and go. And that's the way I felt, you know. From there on, it went downhill. I drank, and I can't say I didn't have a good time drinking. I had a lot of good times. And booze helped me do a lot of things that I'd have never done. And, well, I think it saved my life, or made something happen, for probably 15 years. And then after that, it's a funny thing. When it quits working, it quits. And when it quit working for me, I'm one of those that kept trying to make it work again for a long time. And I knew that it just wasn't there, but there must be a way. What could I do if I couldn't drink? That was my feelings. I was nothing, just a blob. And but before I got out of the Marine Corps, I got married. And that's when I'd gotten back from Korea. I went in the Marine Corps as a PFC because I had prior service. And I got busted before I got out of boot camp to private. And I was in the Marine Corps 3 years, and I made corporal. And when I got discharged, I was a private again. And all of it was due to drinking. I had went up before a company commander one time and a base psychiatrist another time, and he asked me, he said, "Do you know why you drink like you do?" And I couldn't answer that question. But what happened, I met this barmaid. I love barmaids. And they always seemed like they had something going for them, And I was getting ready to re-enlist for 6 years, ship over for 6. I was a corporal, I was single, and I was going to get 36 months embassy duty in England. And I was all set to do that, and I met this barmaid. Well, we ran down, she was married, and we went down to Mexico, and I don't even count this marriage. She got a divorce, and we got married in Mexico. And we came back, and I told the sergeant major, I'll never forget this guy, he's a master sergeant. And I said, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to ship over, I'm getting out. He said, you can't do that, you're a Marine, and blah, 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 And I said, well, I'm getting out, I've got married. And he said, you can't get married without your CO's permission. And I spent the last 6 months of my time in the military restricted to the base. I was what they call a PAL, prisoner at large. And I spent very few nights on the base. And the only reason I did that is because the sergeant major, who was really riding me, he never stayed on the base either. And give you an example, I was at I think it was the East-West football game they had in February or something, or North-South or whatever it is, at the blue and gray. And I went over off the base, I'm at the football game, and I'm about half loaded, and I run into my CO. Luck of the Irish, But anyway, I got in a lot of trouble before I got out, and then when I got out, her and she got a divorce legally, and then we got married, and then a couple of years we got divorced, and then we got remarried, and we did that 5 times in 14 years. We had 3 children, and we bought 5 homes, buy a house, live in a while, couldn't make the payments, lose it, and all because of the drinking, And, she should have known, really. I used to think about this, that we'd be up all night or out all night racing cane, and we'd go back, she'd take me back to the base in the morning, and we'd stop somewhere, and I'd have a bottle of beer, and she'd have a cup of coffee, And that's at 6 o'clock in the morning, And so I know that now, but I didn't then. That's not quite social drinking, But anyway, this 14 years that we were together, a lot of things happened. It just really destroyed those people's lives, and the kids and all of them. I know that today, but I didn't know it then. I'd go off on 4- and 5-day benders, and that's the way it was. And then I'd come back home, and I'd beg my way back in the house, and I'd just went on and on, just total nightmares. And, I'd straighten up for a short period of time. She'd pick up my hot checks and all this stuff, and, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then I might be sober a week, and I couldn't take it any longer, and I'd be off and running. She asked me one time, she said, you know, I kiss you goodbye in the morning, you go to work, and everything's great, and then I don't see you for 4 days. What happens? And I couldn't answer that question. I really couldn't. And I embarrassed everybody, and you know, just stuff. We bought a brand new home one time in Fullerton, and they had a liquidation sale. They couldn't sell all the houses, and her ex-husband bought one on the next street for like $100 down or something. And boy, I mean, I was really, you know, working this one over. And one Sunday morning, I was having a few drinks, and I got to thinking about it, and I went over and rang his doorbell. And he opened the door, and I punched him in the mouth. And we're out, and this is like 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and we're out in his front yard going at it. And his then wife runs out and hits me in the head with an egg beater. And the neighbors are mowing their lawns, you know. And I heard the sirens, and so I run back home, and police come up to my house and want me to come out, and I wouldn't. I said, do you have a warrant? And they said, no. I said, well, I'm not coming out. I said, you can come in. But I told them my side of the story, and they sympathized with me, you know. And I said, besides that, his wife hit me with an egg beater, and the cop said, no, it was a potato masher. Well, to make a long story short, they left. They said, don't go back over there anymore. Well, I went back over there 2 more times. And they came back to my house. I never got arrested that day. And then after they left, I went downtown and got good and drunk. And that's kind of stuff that I did, you know. I was watching TV one night, and they had a commando movie on, and I'm reminiscing about the good old days and the service and all that. So I got this stocking cap, and I had a crossbow, and I put black shoe polish on under my eyes, you know. I climbed up on my roof. I could see his front door from my roof. And I had a quart of whiskey, or a half a quart of whiskey. And I was going to get him when he come out the door. Again, I was just going to shoot him in the kneecaps. That's what I used to say, you know, with a crossbow. Jeez. Well, I fell off the roof, broke my arm, and I'm laying there in the front yard, and my son Kerrigan comes running out. I said, get me a can of beer and call an ambulance. And in that order, right? And in fact, one of my neighbors come over to see what was going on. And it was 11 o'clock at night, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm sunbathing. You know, I didn't like my neighbors either. But just stuff like that, you know. The neighborhood was glad to see us move, I'll tell you. And we lost that house. And in fact, I lived in it for a while after they repossessed it and had it boarded up, and I'd broke in, and because everybody was gone. And that's one of the first times I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd call them up and ask them, you know, what time the meeting was. And it was always the same time. You know? Then I'd have a couple of drinks, and I'd think, what the hell did I call them for? You know, who needs them? And I was living in this empty house with about 15 neighborhood cats, and sleeping on the sink board by the sink, and the broken glass, because I used to break the window to get in, and I'd forget that I'd broken one the night before, and I'd break a new one. And it was just an insane time of my life, you know. And anyway, you know, when it's over, you know, when they got that look in their eye, you know. And I went to my first AA meeting in 1960 or 61, first part of 61. And what had happened, my wife was a barmaid, and I was having a few beers where she worked, and I left a place where she worked with one of the lady customers. And that's not too bright, you know. And so I'd promised that I would go to AA that time. That was the first time that ever came up. And so I was in a step house in Long Beach for a while, and I got sober, and I got back in the house, and I didn't go to AA anymore, and I didn't drink for about 6 months. And it happened, you know, if you, like me, you got to drink again. I've got some kind of spiritual thing going on, like a higher power. But I made these promises and all that, and what happened was I stayed, you know, I'd go to work and bring my check home and all that, and but I couldn't take it. It got to me, and I just, then I had to drink. And she'd say, well, we're going to go over and visit so-and-so. I'd say, I can't go over there, they drink. And I said, I can't be around people that drink. And then she'd say something, and I'd say, you wanted me sober, this is it. This is what it's about. And it just totally obnoxious, you know. But, you know, the things that, I never really talk about them a lot, but it's like my daughter, when she was 5 years old, I come home one Saturday afternoon, and she was standing on the front porch, and she was crying. And she was all dressed up real cute. It was her birthday. And I asked her why she was crying. I was about half in the bag, and she said, you missed my birthday party, Daddy. And man, that was heavy. I thought about that a lot after I got here. But I'll never forget the look on her face. But that wasn't enough to stop me from drinking. You know, I left, just turned around and walked away and went and got drunker, you know. But that was heavy, you know, that kind of stuff. And the kids, one of my boys was hit by a car. And it was one of those days that I didn't go to work. I got drunk instead, and nobody knew where I was. And they finally located me at 9 o'clock at night. And the guy that called, they left a message. The bartender come up to me, and he says, we just got a message for you. Your son is laying over here in St. Jude Hospital. He's not expected to live. He was hit by a car. And I kind of sobered up a little bit. They've been since 5 o'clock trying to find me to get permission to operate on him. And he had a brain damage. He was knocked into the air, and he came down on the hood of a car, and it crushed this part of his head in. And anyway, I got over that hospital, and you know, I could see the looks in these other people's eyes, you know, the nurses and the nuns and the doctors, and what a disgusting thing I was, you know. And anyway, they operated, and he got out about midnight, and he was unconscious for like 4 weeks before he came to. And I swore I would never, ever take another drink. And my wife and I took turns staying at the hospital and all this stuff. And he got out of the hospital and he came home. He came out of his coma, whatever it was, and first thing he said was he wanted a hamburger. Anyway, everybody came to the house, my mother-in-law and all these people, and him, and I hadn't had a drink in 4 weeks, and I just slipped out and went down to the place I used to hang out in, and got drunker than hell. And that's how long that lasted. And I did that a lot of times, a lot of different times. But anyway, it came to an end. I got to get to the program here, right? Oh, our watches are coordinated. Like I said, I made my first meeting in first part of 61. And I had my last drink in 1969, February 19th, and I celebrate my birthday on the 20th. And I'd been through a couple of step houses prior to that. The last 10 years of my drinking, it was off and on. And I was sober 6 months, I was sober 5 months, I was sober 2 weeks, I was sober 4 weeks, I was sober, you know, different lengths of time. And I just, by the time I got here, I figured I'm the kind of guy that's going to die drunk. There's no way that I'll ever be sober. I don't even know if I'm alcoholic, but I knew I was, you know. I thought, you know, because I didn't understand how something that could make you feel so good could turn around and kick your butt, you know. And It just didn't make sense to me. There had to be something else wrong. I thought I had a brain tumor, all kinds of stuff, And, I used to sit at them bars, and I really believe I became alcoholic sitting on a bar stool. That's my own personal opinion, drinking whiskey. And I like 10 High whiskey. That's why I identified with Norm Elpy, if some of you remember him. He talked about 10 High whiskey. And I thought that was top shelf. I got here, one of the first speakers I heard said that when he had a hangover, he drank 10 High and threw it up, and then he drank the good stuff. And I had a resentment against that guy for about 2 years, And Norm used to talk about it a lot. I really love that guy. He was one of the greatest. And anyway, I finally had my last drink, and there was two things that happened. My sponsor, my first sponsor, who sponsored me the last 2 years of my drinking, said to me one day, he says, "I think you ought to get a different sponsor." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "I don't think I'm doing you any good." And that really hurt my feelings, because I thought he was doing a great job. And the other one was Chief at the club in Anaheim. He said, one of these days nobody's going to believe you, and, he says, or maybe worse than that, he says, you'll turn into a periodic. And I said, what's a periodic? He said, that's a guy that gets in trouble when he drinks during his period. Oh, okay. He's the guy that used to throw me out of the Anaheim club under the "We Care" sign. I remember looking at that sign as I'm going through the door. And I thought, yeah, they care. But I wanted to be sober, but because I'd go out in the parking lot and I'd drink some more, and I'd pass out for a while, and then I'd wake up and I forgot if I'd been in the club that day or not, and I'd go back in and they'd throw me out. I even got thrown out of an Al-Anon meeting. It was in the back room of the club, and I dove through the window. I wanted help. And this rather large, friendly Al-Anon picked me up by the back of the neck and the seat of the pants and threw me out. And they didn't understand. And I got to be grateful for that, though. But anyway, those are the two things that went through my mind when I had my last drink. And I was going to court. I'd been there a couple times, and I was now divorced, and for the final time. And the reason I was sober, and I got drunk, and just before this. And what had happened, I was planning on marrying my wife again, because I had this Catholic background, and you didn't get divorced. But what happened, a guy by the name of Ray B came up to me and he says, I was sober 30 days. He said, you better stay away from her. Every time you get back together with that gal, you get drunk. He says, stay away from her for 30 days and see what happens. So I did, and she got married to somebody else. And man, I didn't know how to handle that, so I got drunk again. And I called him up at 3 in the morning, and I said, you broke up my family. He said, you idiot, you've been divorced for 2 years, But anyway, just at the tail end of my drinking was just messy, and I did a lot of things that I didn't plan on doing, and I hurt a lot of people. And just believe me, I had some amends to make when I got here, finally. And so I remember then they left. They moved out of California because of me, and they moved to Arizona. And I went back to court this morning, and I told Keith, he was my sponsor, I said, I don't think I can quit drinking. I said, but that district attorney said he was going to give me a year. I said, maybe if I do a year, I'll quit drinking. And that was the way I felt that morning. I was just totally empty. And we got into court, and the 2 weeks before, the DA had stood out there in the hallway and poked his finger in my chest and told me these things. And we get into court, and they dismissed all the charges that were against me. And but I had to take the judge had to chew me out and read me off in front of the people in the courtroom. And I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't, nothing, no feelings, because I knew he was telling the truth. And he didn't say, you know, maybe you should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody ever told me that, said that to me. He said, you know, you're just a no-good bum, go out in the streets and die and leave people alone. He said, if I ever hear you trying to contact your family or any of your children, he said, I'll have you picked up. And I knew he was telling the truth, you know, because deep inside I didn't want to be that way, but I knew that nobody understood, you know, not even me, you know. And anyway, we walked out of that courtroom, and I said to Keith, well, I don't have to stay around here anymore, you know. And he says, well, you better. And I said, what do you mean? He said, do you want to get sober? He said, if you run now, he said, you'll never get sober. He says, stay here. He said, we'll go to a lot of meetings. And he says, when you get a year, one day at a time, if you decide you don't want this thing, you can throw it in. And he said, besides that, you'll have a lot of money saved up, and you can go on a hell of a good one. And that impressed me. That's how he got my attention. Except that he lied to me. By the time I got a year, I was so far in debt, I couldn't believe it. Yeah. Just, I remember I was 2 months sober, and I saw this lady that I was kind of attracted to, and I approached her and I asked her if, you know, if she'd like to go out on a date, that I was attracted to her, and she said, how long are you sober? And I said, almost 6 months. And she said, well, wait till you get a year and then I'll talk to you. So, well, by the time I got a year, she didn't look that attractive, you know. And it's just the way it was. And I got to tell you one quick thing about an Al-Anon that I really loved. She passed away here a while back, but she was part of my sobriety. She had a husband and a son that never got sober. And it's little Ruthie, if anybody in here might have known her, but she was a real short little gal. And she passed away in her 80s here a few years ago. Just a neat person. But anyway, I was 30 days sober, and I was sitting on the couch in the club after a meeting on Sunday morning. And she come walking up to me, and I was wearing a wedding band. And she said, you're divorced, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, I am. And she says, well, how come you're wearing that wedding band? And I said, that's to protect me. And she's a sweet little, she looks like a nun, you know what I mean? And she leans over and she said, dearie, why don't you take that ring off and stick it up your rear end? I was insulted. But her and I, the reason I mention her, in my 5th year of sobriety, we sponsored an Alateen group together. And that was one of my best years in AA. We really had some good times with those kids. I was telling John tonight when he was eating dinner, I went to a memorial service here in Orange County a couple of months ago, and this kid came up to me, a young man, about 35, 36, and he said, do you remember me? And I said, well, I'm not sure, you look familiar. He said, I'm Jerry McCarty's son. He says, well, you were my Alateen sponsor when he was 16. And he started telling me how, you know, what happened. But that was, those kind of things, it's hard to describe the feelings when it happens, you know. And it's like everybody, like, I don't know, some of you know Angie from the desert. She's a circuit speaker and speaks quite a bit. And Mexican Angie. And she, in my early years of sobriety, she was my secretary. She worked for me. And she's another person that helped save my life, a lot of things. You know, she told me one time, she said, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, if you might move to Hawaii or New York. She said, but we'll still be friends. We'll always be friends. We'll always be in contact. We'll always hear about each other, you know. And that's, you know, what it is in AA. But anyway, I'm grateful to my sponsor. He took me through the steps, and I didn't do my 5th step with him till I was a year and a half sober. And I read my 4th step to him sitting in his truck outside the club after a meeting one night. And that was the first time I'd ever leveled with another guy, that much stuff. And it was good. I really loved this guy, really trusted him, and really felt okay about him. And when I was 10 years sober, he drank, and it blew me away. I couldn't believe it. And but he didn't drink and die. He was 18 years sober, and he's been drinking for 18 years now. And of course, he's diabetic. He drinks wine. They've cut off one leg and one foot, and but he was a beautiful man. He saved me a lot of times, and he told me things like, he said, you came to the program empty-handed and it went to your head. And he was right, But he got me through the steps, and then my second sponsor was a bookman. And we went to a lot of meetings together. And then my third sponsor, he moved away, and my third sponsor was Charlie from Malibu, Charlie V, until he passed away here a few years ago. And he was a beautiful man in my life. And he's the one that showed me how to he told me how to take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle and put, it's anybody, like my wife, if I had, I don't have a wife now, but if I had one, and put her name on this side and my name on the other side, and write down all the things that I want from her under her name, and then under my name write down all the things that I'm willing to give. And you can do this with a job or a dog or a cat or a car, or and it's very interesting how that turns out. If you ever want to try that, you really find out stuff about yourself. And usually it's something that I don't like, and that I'd like to have removed, and then I have to go to the next step in that process and ask to have it removed. I can't remove it myself, And sometimes it gets removed right away, and sometimes it takes a while. I don't identify with your virtues. I identify with your character defects, and because the virtues are forced on me if I have any. It ain't nothing to do with what I want to do or want to be. I found out that about myself. And without a higher power, if there are any new people here or fairly new, that's the answer. And one day at a time. It becomes a way of life, but the real meaning of a way of life has just happened to me in the last few years, where I could really feel it. I always thought it or wanted it or all of this, but to really be part of it and to know that it is, and yet that it's only for one day, And I used to hate that, Somebody had, see, it's like when I met somebody and they told me they cared for me. My job then was to find out how much they cared, and the only way to find that out is you test them. Well, by the time I got done testing them, they didn't care for me. And I didn't know that till I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, that I did those things, I thought it was what men did, macho, whatever. And so I spent too much time on my drunk log, I guess. But I'm really grateful to be here tonight. I'll just tell you real quick, the things that are the biggest things to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been married and divorced 4 times in AA. And so I can't give you a dissertation on relationships, But I can tell you this much. It doesn't pay to test. Anyway, I was... the granddaughter of mine that I really loved so much. I had 4 boys and 1 granddaughter, and she's made me or my daughter has made me a grandfather, and then my granddaughter's made me a great-grandfather. And when my granddaughter was 3 years sober, they were living in Arizona, And she called me up in the wee hours of the morning. Her dialed the phone number and called me. And it scared the hell out of me. And I asked her where her mother was. I said, "What's wrong? Where's your mom?" And she says, "She's asleep, Grandpa." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She says, "Nothing, Grandpa. I just wanted to call you and tell you that I love you. And I'm going to tell you something. You can't buy something like that, you know." And it's just things like that that have really meant a lot. And the kids, I have they're coming down to visit me here right after New Year's, and it's great. I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to go over time because I hear there's a mean guy here that gets you if you go over. So that's the best I can do. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.